There are moments in life that change everything. When you look back, you realize it all started so ordinarily, but that ordinariness never stays the same. My story began just like that. My stepson Liam and I were spending an ordinary evening in the living room. After Marquez's death, silence had taken over this house for 2 years. I had been trying to piece together the missing parts of my life, but I hadn't noticed Liam had grown up. Or maybe I didn't want to notice. We were watching an action-packed movie with bits of romance here and there. Liam was sitting next to me, sprawled on the couch, arms casually stretched out, looking like he owned the place. It was the first time I saw him like that. His shoulders were broader, his jaw more defined. He wasn't a boy anymore. He was a man through and through. But I quickly pushed that thought out of my head. He's my stepson, I reminded myself. Yet that night, I had no idea those reminders would fall short. As the movie went on, the scenes got more intense. Liam leaned slightly to the side, resting his arm on the back of the couch, etching a bit closer to me. It felt like he was about to say something, but he didn't. For a moment, we locked eyes. In his gaze, I saw that depth. And right then, a sense of unease settled inside me. Part of me tried to brush it off, to normalize the moment. It's nothing, just a movie, just a misunderstanding, I told myself. But my feelings weren't lying to me. During one of the romantic scenes, I felt his breath brush against my cheek. Without even realizing it, he had moved closer. His hand on the couch was so close to my shoulder that I couldn't tell if he was about to touch me or not. Inside, I was a mess. Being this close to him made me uncomfortable. Yet strangely, it also sent a thrill through me. That feeling terrified me, but everything was happening so fast. I couldn't even keep up with my own thoughts. Cassidy, he said, his voice low and a little hesitant. I want to tell you something. I turned to him, my heart racing. Yes, Liam, I asked, but my voice was shaking. I want to thank you for everything, he said. After Marquez died, you've always been there for me. You didn't have to, but you did. And because of you, I never felt alone in this house. That's because of you. His words hit me hard, but the intensity of the moment left me feeling even more vulnerable. Of course, Liam, I said, forcing a smile. I'm glad you're here. But he didn't take his eyes off me. Me too, he said slowly, his voice sounding deeper. Seeing you here makes me feel at ease. The air between us grew heavy. All of a sudden, he must have felt it too, because he pulled his hand back a little. But his eyes never left mine. In that moment, I didn't know what to do. My heart was pounding like crazy, and my thoughts were all over the place. I tried to maintain the distance between us, but a spark had already ignited in my mind. He wasn't a boy anymore. That truth hit me that night, and it was a truth that would change everything. That night, Liam's approach towards me was different, warmer, more emotional. For years, I had been like a mother figure to him. But the Liam sitting next to me that night was no longer that little boy. At 19, he was tall, broad-shouldered, and undeniably handsome. But he was still my stepson, wasn't he? That thought was what I clung to as I tried to suppress the confusing feelings stirring inside me. But I couldn't have known that it wouldn't stop there. When Liam looked at me that night, the depth in his eyes left me completely defenseless. As I wondered why he was being so emotional and warm that day, I didn't realize just how close we were to something happening that night. And this story, which started that evening, would change the course of my life entirely. If you enjoy hearing confessions like this, join my channel, subscribe, and turn on notifications to support us. Trust me, this story will be one of the most thrilling ones you'll ever hear. A few days had passed since that night. Liam was acting different than usual. At breakfast, he talked more, and his eyes barely left me. He had started helping around the house in a way he had never done before. "Cassidy, let me help you," he said one morning when he saw me sweeping the floor. He took the broom right out of my hands and started doing it himself. I looked at him in shock. He had never done anything like this before. "I know you handle everything in this house by yourself," he said, his eyes fixed on mine. "You're just one woman. Someone needs to help you here." Those words both surprised and oddly moved me. "Thank you, Liam," I said, trying to steady the slight tremble in my voice. But inside, a warm wave spread through me. The way he had so plainly acknowledged my loneliness struck a deep chord. Later that day, while I was cooking in the kitchen, I felt Liam's eyes on me. He was standing behind me, leaning against the counter, just watching. But these weren't the kind of looks I was used to. His eyes wandered over my body, my hips, my back, my hair. At first, I thought I was imagining it. "No, Cassidy, you're overreacting," I told myself. But I could feel the intensity in his gaze. I did my best to act normal, but deep down I couldn't deny the slight thrill I was feeling. To be honest, I liked it. It had been so long since I'd felt someone's attention on me like that. When Liam left the kitchen, I couldn't help but go to the mirror. I looked at myself in the reflection. Even in my 40s, I was still attractive. I had a slim waist, full hips, and a toned body thanks to regular exercise. My light brown wavy hair fell gracefully over my shoulders, framing my face in a soft way. My breasts, well, they seemed to have forgotten my age. I hadn't looked at myself like this in the mirror in such a long time. In that moment, something stirred inside me. Something was changing. I could feel it. I could. Liam's behavior became more obvious as the days went by. His eyes never left me anymore. Sometimes it was a casual touch, sometimes just a simple word. But I started noticing that he was pushing the boundaries between us. Maybe the worst part was, I found myself enjoying it. After what happened in the kitchen that day, as I lay in bed that night, one thought wouldn't leave my mind. Liam wasn't a boy anymore. He had grown into a mature, handsome man. But I never could have guessed how much that realization would excite me. And I knew very soon there would be a moment where all of this would spiral into something impossible to untangle. One evening, I came home after being out, and the sight that greeted me left me breathless. Candles everywhere, flowers, a beautifully set table, and a romantic atmosphere. More than anything, I was captivated by the birthday surprise Liam had prepared. At first, I couldn't believe it was for my birthday. This level of effort seemed more like something you do for a lover. When Liam came into the living room to greet me, I immediately understood why I thought that. He was wearing a white shirt and black trousers. I'd never seen him like this before. So put together, so charismatic. It was hard to take my eyes off him. "I wanted to make this day special for you," he said with a faint smile. Then he handed me a box. When I opened it and saw the dress inside, I looked at him in shock. It was a stunning, bold red dress with a soft texture, a deep open back, and a high slit. The moment I saw it, I felt both excitement and hesitation bubbling up inside me. "You bought this for me?" I asked, surprised. "Of course, it's your birthday, and I wanted you to wear something special. I'm sure it'll look amazing on you," he said, his voice calm, but his gaze intense. I took the dress and went to my room. Standing in front of the mirror, I felt the soft red fabric brush against my skin, and I experienced something I hadn't felt in a long time. As I slipped the dress on, I realized I hadn't worn anything that showcased my figure this beautifully in years. My long legs peeked elegantly through the slit. The curve of my waist and the smooth line of my back perfectly complemented the dress's design. I looked at my reflection, and, after a moment of silent observation, I smiled and whispered to myself, "This is crazy. I'm dressing up for Liam, but wow, I really do look stunning in this dress." I studied my reflection more closely, facing truths I had ignored for years. Yes, I was in my late 40s, but this dress made me feel like I was in my 20s again. My skin was still smooth. My light brown hair fell softly around my shoulders, framing my face with elegance. And inside, I felt a thrill I hadn't felt in a long time. Taking a deep breath, I left the room. When I walked down to the living room, Liam's eyes locked onto me, and he didn't look away. The way he stared at me made everything even more surreal. There was no missing the admiration in his gaze. Smiling, I said, "I owe this to you. The dress is incredible." But I quickly looked down, feeling flustered, feeling self-conscious under Liam's intense gaze. "I was right," Liam said, his eyes still glued to me. "You look absolutely stunning in that dress." Hearing such a direct compliment, I felt my heart race, but I tried to brush it off, replying, "You're exaggerating." Liam guided me to the table he had prepared. There were 2 wine glasses, and a bottle of red wine sat elegantly in the center. For a moment, I felt like I was in an entirely different scenario. This didn't feel like a birthday celebration. It felt like a romantic dinner. But I didn't say anything, because the atmosphere had completely drawn me in. Liam opened the wine and poured it into our glasses. Soft music played in the background, and the wine left a warm sweetness on our tongues. At first, our conversation was about the past, about Marquez and the changes in our lives. But as the evening went on, I noticed Liam slowly steering the conversation to something much more personal. "Cassidy," he said suddenly, his voice soft, but carrying a serious tone. "How can a woman like you be alone? I just don't get it." I locked eyes with him, completely at a loss for words. "Liam, lonely isn't always a choice. Life has a way of leaving you alone," I said. But his gaze held something deeper. "You don't have to stay alone," he added, lifting his glass to his lips. "A woman like you has needs, Cassidy. And I'm here." The words caught in my throat. What he said touched me far deeper than I was prepared for. I raised my glass and took another sip, but my eyes stayed on Liam. This birthday had stopped being just a celebration. It was turning into something completely different. When Liam set his wine glass down, he never took his eyes off me. "Cassidy, you look absolutely incredible. I wanted this night to be special for you because you deserve it," he said, his voice low but firm. I gave a shy smile, twirling my glass in my hand. "That's really sweet of you to say, Liam. But sometimes I wonder why you're putting in so much effort," I said. Liam raised an eyebrow slightly and replied, "Because you deserve it. You're not just a stepmom, Cassidy. You're so much more than that." His tone carried a depth that both surprised and deeply moved me. For a moment, neither of us looked away. The silence between us only intensified the tension. My heart was pounding, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything to break the moment. Liam slowly stood up from his seat, walked around the table and came to my side, resting his hand on the edge of the table. He leaned toward me. Cassidy, you don't deserve to share your life with someone who doesn't appreciate you. No one should overlook a woman like you, he said. Liam, I began, but I had no idea what to say. The words were caught in my throat. Just as I was about to speak, Liam leaned in closer to my face. I can't hide how I feel about this, he said in a whisper. And then his lips met mine. The kiss completely threw me off balance. I felt a passion, a warmth, a connection I hadn't felt in years. And what had started as a moment of shock quickly turned into something I couldn't help but respond to. Our lips stayed locked for what felt like an eternity, as though the world had come to a halt. But suddenly reality hit me. I slowly pulled away from Liam, completely out of breath. This isn't right, I said, my voice trembling. Liam, I need to go to my room, was all I could manage to say. Liam looked at me and took a deep breath. I'm sorry, Cassidy, but I couldn't stop myself from feeling this, he said, his voice calm, yet still carrying a fire within it. Without saying anything else, I stood up and hurried to my room. As soon as I entered, I shut the door and leaned against it, taking a deep breath. My heart was racing, and I tried to piece together what had just happened. I sat down on the edge of my bed and looked at the mirror. Even my reflection seemed unable to shake off the weight of that moment. How did this happen? I whispered to myself. The whirlwind in my mind, mixed with the effects of the wine, slowly pulled me into my bed. As soon as my head hit the pillow, the emotions and weight of the evening overwhelmed me, and I drifted off to sleep. But the night wasn't over yet. Sometime later, I heard a faint noise. My eyes fluttered open, and I saw a shadow at the door. The door was slowly opening, and in the dim light, Liam's silhouette appeared. Cassidy, he whispered softly. His voice was low, but there was a certain determination to it. My heart started pounding again as he walked into the room. I know I shouldn't be here, but I can't help it, he said, closing the door behind him. In that moment, the look in Liam's eyes told me that this night wasn't over. The determination in his gaze and the tone of his voice completely consumed me. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might burst out of my chest. I knew I needed to say something to him. As my eyes locked onto his, suppressed emotions suddenly bubbled to the surface. I know I need to give you an answer, Liam, I said, my voice trembling but laced with raw honesty. I feel the same about you, and I want you. The determination in Liam's eyes completely captivated me. The emotions I had buried for years were no longer something I could hide. My heart raced in my chest, and I knew I had to respond. Taking a deep breath, I steadied my shaking voice. I know I need to give you an answer, Liam, I said, locking my eyes on his. I feel the same way, and I want you. As those words left my lips, the mixture of surprise and happiness on Liam's face gave me a surge of courage. A soft smile played on my lips, and I closed my eyes for a moment to gather myself. Please, before I lose my nerve, I said, my hands moving to my shoulders as I slowly slipped the thin straps of my dress down. The fabric slid off my body and fell to the floor, leaving me standing there. Liam's breath caught, and in his eyes, palpable desire fueled the excitement coursing through me. Without hesitation, Liam stepped closer to me, and our lips met again. His kiss was so full of passion that it felt as though the entire world had stopped. His hand slid around my waist, pulling me tightly against him as the kiss deepened. Finally, he gently guided me toward the bed. When we reached the edge, Liam's hands carefully lowered me onto the mattress. As my eyes stayed locked on his, the weight of him over me made me surrender completely. Liam bent down, quickly pulled off his shirt, and tossed it aside. Then he placed his knees on the bed and leaned over me. The determination and intensity of desire in his eyes only fueled the fire inside me even more. His fingers slowly slid down my cheek, finding my lips again. In that moment, the boundaries that had been built between us over the years completely vanished. I felt something I hadn't felt in over 2 years. I had fully surrendered. As Liam continued, I gripped the sheets tightly with my hands and closed my eyes. I let myself get lost in the tension and excitement coursing through my body. When I opened my eyes and looked at Liam, seeing his flushed face and broad shoulders, I couldn't resist. I reached my hands to his back and, in a fleeting moment of excitement, dug my nails into his skin. Liam must have liked it because his heartbeat sped up even more. I placed my hand over his chest, feeling his racing heart. And at that moment, Liam couldn't hold back any longer and let himself go. We had surrendered to each other, and Liam, breathless, lay down beside me. That day, while talking about romantic things, I had fallen asleep. After this day, my life was going to take a completely different turn. I had just experienced a night where I was happier than I had ever been, and in that moment, I realized this was only the beginning. Make sure to listen to what happens next, because this story doesn't end here. Just stay tuned. If you've made it this far, I know my story has deeply touched you. There's so much more to share, and you won't want to miss any of it. I initially believed it was merely a simple mistake, something that would end right there. However, I was mistaken. That day marked the beginning of what would become the most complicated and forbidden moments of my life. Even now, as I share this story with you, I can feel my hands trembling. This isn't just a confession. It's a confrontation with my own inner conflict, shame, and desire. Alfred, my mother's husband, was a mature, charismatic man who always exuded confidence. He didn't need to speak loudly to command attention. Most of the time, he was quiet around the house, yet his presence was enough to fill any room. He was my mum's second husband, and we had never had a close relationship. He was polite but distant, until that day when everything changed. My mom, Jennifer, was out with her friends as usual, leaving the house to Alfred and me. It was a quiet evening, or at least I thought it would be. I had retreated to my room to change clothes, standing in front of my mirror dressed only in my underwear. I was about to slip into a dress when I heard the faint sound of the door creaking open. "Emily, your door's open," Alfred said softly from the doorway. His voice was calm, yet strong enough to jolt me. I turned my head and saw his eyes on me. Time seemed to freeze. I didn't know what to do. I didn't cover myself, but I didn't move either. He hesitated at the door, his hand resting on it, as if debating whether to come in or step back. His gaze lingered just long enough for me to feel a wave of confusion and something else, something unexplainable. My heart pounded in my chest. It was just a few seconds, but in those seconds, everything seemed to shift. "I'm sorry," he said finally, averting his eyes. But his voice didn't sound entirely apologetic. It carried a hint of hesitation, as though he wasn't sure whether he truly regretted it. He stepped back, but his presence still filled the room, even after he closed the door. "It's fine," I murmured, my voice shaking slightly. But inside, I knew it wasn't fine. Something had shifted in me, and I couldn't ignore it. He left, and I was left alone with my thoughts. Yet, his lingering gaze and the subtle tension in the air stayed with me. That moment was etched into my mind, and I couldn't shake it. I thought it was just a mistake, something awkward that would fade. But I was wrong. Just a few days later, it happened again. And this time, it went even further. Up until that point, everything could have been chalked up to an awkward mistake, a poorly timed interaction. I thought the same, but it didn't take long for me to realize that it wasn't going to stop there. That day was just the beginning, and now I'll tell you everything that happened from that moment onward. The next day, we had a wedding to attend. One of my mom's closest friends was getting married for the second time. My mom was her usual cheerful, excitable self, all dressed up and ready for the event. Jennifer had always been someone who loved to have fun. She was devoted to her friends, but not necessarily to the idea of loyalty in the deeper sense. I, on the other hand, wasn't thrilled about going. But Alfred's presence at that wedding changed everything. We arrived at the venue together, and as the crowd bustled around us, I found myself glancing at Alfred more than I should have. Maybe he had always been this handsome, this charismatic, and I just hadn't noticed before. Under the soft glow of the wedding lights, he seemed to radiate confidence. His suit was perfectly tailored, and every step he took exuded effortless charm. Yet, I was trying to shake the thoughts in my head. "Don't be ridiculous, Emily," I told myself. But my eyes kept wandering back to him. A dance started playing, and my mom and Alfred were in the middle of the dance floor swaying to the rhythm. Jennifer had that usual carefree smile on her face. But then, mid-dance, she suddenly turned to me and grinned. "Alfred, ask Emily to dance," she said. "I need to go over to my friends for a bit." Something inside me jolted, and my heart started racing. Alfred hesitated for a moment, then smiled and extended his hand toward me. His eyes held an expression that was unbothered, confident. "Come on, Emily," he said, his tone light. "You'll need to teach me a few moves." Jennifer had already embarrassed me on the dance floor with his easygoing demeanor. I couldn't bring myself to refuse. I reached out hesitantly, my voice trembling as I replied, "Sure." As we walked toward the dance floor under the gaze of the crowd, my nerves prickled. The moment his hand found its place on my waist, I felt my breathing quicken. His cologne, the warmth of his touch, it was all so real. This story is about to take a turn. If you're intrigued, make sure to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications for more. Your support means the world. Don't forget to leave a like and a comment. While we danced, Alfred's eyes never left mine. "Emily, I had no idea you were this talented," he said with a warm smile. There was a certain charm in his voice that struck a chord deep within me. "Dancing with you is genuinely enjoyable." I avoided his gaze, trying to mask whatever was flickering inside me. "I'm just doing my best," I said. But the tremble in my voice betrayed me. Alfred's smile grew softer. "Don't sell yourself short," he said. And I could feel his hand press more firmly against my waist. "This isn't just dancing. We're sharing something. Don't you feel it?" That was the moment I realized that the connection between us wasn't just about the dance. My body moved in time with the music, but my heart and mind were spinning out of control. The crowd around us, my mom, the noise, everything else faded away. There was only Alfred and the hands holding me steady. The confusion and desire inside me were overpowering. During the dance, Alfred's voice came softly but deeply, breaking through my chaotic thoughts. "I wanted to apologize for the other day," he said. "I just meant to give you a heads up. But like that, it was probably a little disrespectful to your space." Warmth surged through me, and I could feel my cheeks flush. My eyes drifted downward, but I wanted to ease the tension. "It's okay," I said quickly, my voice shaking slightly. "Really, it's no big deal. Those things can happen." Alfred paused for a moment, but didn't stop dancing. His eyes remained steady on mine. "Still," he continued, his voice softening, "if it made you uncomfortable, I want you to know that wasn't my intention. I just wanted to get your attention." My heartbeat quickened. "I wasn't uncomfortable," I said, trying to reassure him. At the same time, I was fighting the strange thrill that was beginning to rise inside me. "Really, it's fine." The air between us thickened for a moment as we continued to dance. I was acutely aware of his hand on my waist and the sincerity in his gaze, which stirred something deep within me. But the intensity didn't last long, as the music slowly came to an end. We stopped dancing. "Thank you," Alfred said with a gentle smile. "You're truly a wonderful dance partner." I simply nodded, my heart still racing. "Thank you too," I said softly. Then I quickly returned to my table and sat down. Alfred lingered for a moment, his eyes still on me, before eventually moving to another table. But in that moment, those lingering glances made it clear that whatever this was between us was not over. If anything, it had just begun. When Jennifer returned to the wedding hall, she approached us with a bright smile on her face. "What a lovely dance," she said, congratulating us. "You both looked amazing out there." Her compliment only made me feel more flustered, but I tried to play it off. "It was fun," I said with a faint smile. Alfred simply nodded politely, a barely visible smile playing on his lips. Jennifer continued speaking, clapping her hands excitedly. "Guess what? After the wedding, the girls and I are having a bachelorette party. Completely girls only. Alfred, you'll take Emily home, right?" Alfred smiled lightly. "Of course, that's no problem," he replied casually. At that moment, I realized how unfair Jennifer's behavior was toward Alfred. On a night when she should have been by his side, she was leaving him alone. A pang of discomfort settled in my chest, but I pushed it down. Jennifer didn't seem to care in the slightest. Having fun with her friends was clearly her priority. When the wedding ended, Alfred and I walked toward the car together. Jennifer had already left with her friends to go elsewhere. We got into the car, and Alfred quietly started the engine. The silence between us during the drive was almost tangible. I stared out the window, trying not to feel like I needed to fill the quiet with words. But Alfred eventually broke the silence. "Jennifer sometimes has different priorities," he said, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "But even so, it surprises me how thoughtless she can be at times. Nights like these, you'd expect your partner to be by your side." I didn't hear his tone. It was calm and reflective, but I could sense the hint of disappointment beneath it. His words struck a chord deep within me. The thought of someone like Alfred, strong, charismatic, and composed, feeling lonely, tugged at my heart. I gathered myself and responded, though my voice wavered slightly. "Yes, I suppose at times like these, a little more consideration is important." Alfred nodded slightly. "You're right," he said, his gaze still steady on the road. "But I guess every relationship is different." In that moment, I felt an unspoken connection building between us. It was as if I could understand and even feel his loneliness. At the same time, I struggled to suppress my own emotions. That brief conversation seemed to draw me closer to him. The bond between us grew quietly yet powerfully. When we arrived home, Alfred opened the door and gestured for me to step inside. "Good night," he said. But it was clear from the way he hesitated that he wasn't quite ready to leave just yet. As I walked toward my room, I noticed Alfred still standing near the doorway. A strange urge stopped me in my tracks, and I turned to face him. "Alfred," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "would you like to come in? Maybe we could talk for a while." Even though I could see in Alfred's eyes that he really wanted to stay, he politely declined. After what had happened the other day, he seemed hesitant. I had invited him in to show that I'd moved past it, that it wasn't a big deal anymore. But instead, I found myself retreating to my room, replaying Jennifer's behavior and Alfred's words over and over in my mind. I could feel his loneliness. It affected me more than I wanted to admit. Sitting on the edge of my bed, I tried to calm myself down, but the thoughts in my head wouldn't quiet. Why was I thinking about him so much? Why couldn't I stop replaying the day he accidentally walked into my room? The hours crept by, and the house grew quieter. Jennifer still hadn't returned, and I had no idea what Alfred was doing. As I wrestled with my thoughts, the sound of my door suddenly opening made me freeze. I looked up to see Alfred standing in the doorway. His eyes held a sense of determination, but his expression was conflicted. I quickly stood up. "Alfred," I said, unable to hide the surprise in my voice. "What are you doing here?" He closed the door behind him, but didn't step any further into the room. Instead, he stood there as if debating with himself. "Emily," he began, his voice low but laden with emotion. "You're right. Jennifer isn't fair to me. But tonight, I don't care about what Jennifer is doing or not doing." He took a step closer, his gaze locking onto mine. "For a while now, I felt something for you," he admitted, his voice steady but laced with hesitation. "Especially after that day I walked into your room by accident. I can't get it out of my head. It was as though the air had been sucked out of the room. I couldn't speak, couldn't even think." Alfred continued, seemingly determined to get everything off his chest, no matter the consequences. "Maybe I'll regret saying this. Maybe I'm making a huge mistake. But I can't keep this inside anymore. Emily, I think about you all the time." He paused, searching my face for a reaction. I knew he could see the shock in my eyes. He took another step closer, his tone softening. "You understand me, Emily? Maybe you don't realize it, but you see me. That's something Jennifer has never been able to do." My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. The weight of the moment was overwhelming. I wanted to respond, but no words came to mind. The silence between us was heavy, filled with all the unspoken emotions we were too afraid to acknowledge. Alfred finally broke eye contact, his gaze falling to the floor. He sighed deeply and swallowed hard. "I'm sorry, Emily," he said, his voice quiet and almost fragile. "I shouldn't have said any of this. I should go." He turned away and started walking toward the door. His steps were deliberate, but it was clear each one carried a burden. When he reached for the doorknob, I noticed the way his shoulders rose and fell with a deep breath. It was then that something inside me shifted. All my fears and confusion melted away, replaced by a boldness I didn't know I had. I couldn't let him leave. "Alfred!" I called out, my voice a whisper, but strong enough to fill the room. He stopped slowly, then turned back toward me. His eyes met mine, filled with turmoil. A battle of regret and longing playing out in their depths. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then, with trembling hands, I slid the straps of my dress off my shoulders, letting it fall to the floor. The dim light in the room accentuated the bare skin of my shoulders and the way the cool air kissed my body. I could feel Alfred's gaze on me, intense and unwavering. I knew he was watching every move, and I couldn't bring myself to look away. "I haven't forgotten either, Alfred," I said, my voice trembling, though the determination inside me was strong enough to overshadow it. That day, the moment you walked into my room, everything changed. Since then, I've been trying to suppress these feelings, but I can't. Because I like you too. Maybe I have for a long time. As the words tumbled out, my heart pounded so hard I thought it might break free from my chest. Alfred stayed quiet for a moment, his eyes searching mine as though he was trying to process what I just said. But in those eyes, I could see the same pull, the same undeniable connection I'd been feeling. "Tonight," I said, taking a deep, steadying breath. "I don't want to fight these feelings anymore. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but this is how I feel." "Alfred?" He stepped closer, his hands gently brushing my face. His touch was both tender and deliberate, as if he was afraid to break the moment. When our eyes locked, it felt like all the space between us had been nothing more than an illusion. Slowly, he leaned down, and his lips met mine. That first kiss unleashed every emotion and desire we'd both been holding back for so long. Alfred's touch. His kiss grew more intense with each passing second. The thought of pulling back, of stopping, didn't even cross my mind. I was completely lost in the moment. Slowly, I stepped backward until I felt the edge of the bed against my legs, and I let myself fall onto it. I watched as Alfred's hands moved to the buttons of his shirt, carefully undoing them one by one. Every movement was deliberate, as if he wanted to savor this moment, to make it last. When he finally shrugged off his shirt, his confident and commanding presence seemed to fill the entire room. He took another step toward me, his gaze never leaving mine. After setting his clothes neatly at the edge of the bed, he leaned down closer and closer until there was nothing left between us but the electricity in the air. The air between us was filled only with passion and desire. Time seemed to stand still. There was only that moment, only us. He leaned over me, and we had a union in which we surrendered to each other completely. It was very emotional. I felt something big and warm inside me. This was different from anything I had ever felt before. When I looked at Alfred, I could see his broad shoulders and his muscular body. I closed my eyes and raised my hands in the air, pressing them firmly against the pillow, trying to follow the movements of Alfred's body. At that moment, my body contracted strongly. Alfred looked at me and said, "You're very special. I've always known that. I understand it better now." He was out of breath. "So are you, Alfred," I said. And I felt warm inside. Everything felt like a dream. As soon as Alfred lay down beside me, I rested my head on his chest. While lying against his strong chest, I could hear the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Feeling the reality of this moment brought both peace and profound turmoil inside me. My fingers gently traced patterns across his chest as I gathered the courage to break the silence. You didn't come into my room by accident this time, Alfred, I said, my voice low but heavy with meaning. I lifted my head to meet his gaze, my words forcing him to confront the truth, yet also revealing the turmoil I felt inside. Alfred smiled faintly, but he couldn't hide the depth of thought etched on his face. No, Emily, he said, nothing about this was accidental. But I had to tell you how I feel, no matter how difficult it might be. I lowered my gaze back to his chest, my fingers slowing their movements. Taking a deep breath, I spoke again. You're such a special and incredibly attractive man, Alfred, I said softly. But what happens after this? How do we continue? My mum. People. Alfred tilted his head slightly, pulling me closer to him as he ran his fingers through my hair. His voice was calm, but filled with emotion. I don't know, Emily. The only thing I do know is that here, in this moment, everything feels real. Being close to you, I can't deny it. His words only deepened the storm inside me. But at the same time, his honesty soothed me. I closed my eyes, focusing on the warmth of his presence, while the uncertainty of the future loomed over us. In that moment, all we could do was feel each other. If you've made it this far, I know my story has touched you deeply. There's so much more to share, and you won't want to miss any of it. Be sure to hit the follow button, turn on notifications, and don't forget to leave a comment about this story. I can't wait to hear your thoughts.